We're ready to start when you are.
Okay, great. Well, it's good to see everybody. It's great to be at Arrowhead. I enjoyed watching practice today, having our fans out there for it, and of course, raising that Super Bowl 54 championship flag. A very special moment for my brother and I think the team, the coaches as well.
Let's go to Adam Teicher to start us off. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, Clark, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Congratulations on that new book of yours.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. Now, you got to read it now. So, hey, wanted to ask you a couple things, Clark. We have not had a chance to talk to you since Pat's new contract. First off, what was your role in all of that beyond maybe what you normally would have on a bigger contract, like, say, Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, going back to last year, Frank Clark? And also, what layer or layers of difficulty did the pandemic add to doing that? Was it difficult for the organization to proceed with a contract of that magnitude, not knowing where the future might be going?
Yeah. Well, just starting with my role, I've mentioned to you guys before on all of our big contracts, I'm very actively involved with our staff, with Brett and his team in terms of working up the proposals and exactly where we want to go as we go through the process. Obviously, the timing was a big issue on this particular extension. Not only because it was Patrick coming off the Super Bowl, but because we were dealing with a pandemic as well. I think you guys saw during the summer, there were very few big contracts done. And we just decided internally that we were going to move ahead. We know we've got a special group of players here, a young core of players who just won a championship and have a chance to win hopefully several more. And we just thought it was important to go ahead, get Patrick done, and then later be able to get Chris done and Kelce extended. So yeah, it took a little bit of nerve, I would say. There were definitely some days where I was like, I'm not sure this is the right thing because we didn't even know we were going to have a season. We don't know what the salary cap is going to be next year. But we were able to construct the contracts in a way that we'll be able to navigate whatever happens, and huge plus for the Chiefs. And we're obviously delighted to have those players here for the long term.
Go to Sam McDowell. Go ahead, Sam.
Hey, Clark, how are you?
Great, thanks.
We've seen, especially this summer, a lot of athlete-led demonstrations about social injustices. You had mentioned in 2017 that you had told your players, you prefer that they would stand for the national anthem. I'm wondering if that's still the case, and if you've had any conversations with players about demonstrations that they might have on opening night.
Yeah, so I've not had any conversation with the players on those issues. I would say that, we're in a very different place as a country. These issues are very important to our players. They're important to our coaching staff, our entire organization. And this is a time to be sensitive. It's a time to listen. It's a time to understand. And I recognize that, around the league, there may be some kneeling that goes on with the national anthem. And I just think the country's in a really different place at this point.
Let's go to Herbie Teope. Go ahead, Herbie.
Hey, Clark, good morning. You mentioned some of the extensions there earlier, and then Brett Veach has done a phenomenal job building a championship roster. He worked some magic to get a deal done with Jones, extensions done on Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and I'm curious, how much thought has gone into extending Brett? And if there is some thought to that, how close are you?
Yeah, well, we're very lucky to have Brett as part of our organization. You're exactly right. He's done an amazing job over the last 3 years of taking a really good roster and turning it into a championship roster. And I think it's a roster now that's going to have a chance for multiple years to be a contender for the Super Bowl. He's done an outstanding job. He works extremely well with Coach Reed. He also has a great rapport with our players. So he's somebody that we want here for the long term. We tend to not talk about contract extensions until they're done, but just suffice it to say that we're fortunate to have Brett here and hope he's here a very long time.
Let's go to Nate Taylor. Go ahead, Nate.
Hey, Clark, I have two questions for you, and thanks for doing this. You mentioned that the country is in a different time right now. I just wondered if you could explain a little bit more in detail how your team may be able to better reflect where the country is moving in terms of helping social justice? And then secondly, Mark Donovan mentioned the idea of Arrowhead perhaps being a polling booth on election day. Just what would it mean for you guys vote and be alongside the Chiefs in obviously democracy being an important part of the country?
Yeah. Nate, you broke up there a little bit, but I think I got most of the question. Going back to the beginning of the summer, we've had a lot of conversations with the leadership group on the team related to the social justice issues. It's not something that's new to the Kansas City Chiefs, really going all the way back to the 1960s and 1970s. My dad really encouraged the players to get out there and use their platform to make a difference in the community. A lot of those efforts over the decades have been focused on things that benefit the minority communities, and we're certainly more focused on that than ever. What I've really appreciated the last couple of years is how engaged the leaders on our team are. And I'll just take Patrick and Tyron as examples. They're very engaged. They want to make a difference. They want to do things that are going to make our country better, things that are going to help us get along as a country. You referenced Arrowhead being a polling station. That's one of their big issues is voter registration and getting people out to vote. And so we've worked with them, and we're working with some organizations here locally to try to encourage people to get out to vote. We've made an effort to get all of our players registered to vote here. And then the icing on the cake would be if we could have Arrowhead as a polling station. We don't know if that's going to work out, but we've had some really good dialogue at some of the highest levels with the state, and we hope it does.
Let's go to Blair Kirchhoff. Go ahead, Blair.
Mark, also this summer and the awareness raising of Native American imagery, and I'm just wondering how your feelings have evolved over the course. The Chiefs have banned the headdresses and certain types of face paint, but I want to know how your feelings have evolved about the Native American imagery and your feelings on the Arrowhead chop.
Yeah, well, I think really going back 70 years ago when we started the dialogue with our Native American working group here in Kansas City, that group represents approximately 30 tribes around the Midwest. It was a real learning experience for the organization. I heard Mark Donovan the other day, mention just how much he learned, how much we learned as an organization. We learned that the face paint and the headdresses were a big issue for the tribes. And we started at that point trying to discourage our fans from bringing them to the stadium. We made some progress on that over the last 6 years. And of course, this summer we took the next step, which is outright banning them from bringing them into the stadium. I think the important thing on the entire subject has been how important the education has been. It's something that's important to the American Indians, both from a cultural heritage standpoint and just preserving their traditions. But it's also a way of educating our fans that these things are offensive to them. So instead of just coming outright 7 years ago and banning it, we've had this education process that's gotten us to the point where we are today. We've now expanded our relationship beyond just the group in the Midwest that we've been working with. We're working with the National Congress of American Indians. They represent over 570 tribes throughout North America, and we've had some really good conversations with them. They want us to expand our education. They want to work with us on that to even really take that to a higher level. And I'm sure there'll be some steps down the road we take on other things related to our game day production.
Let's go to Pete Sweeney next. Go ahead, Pete.
Good morning, Clark. As the league's financial chair, just how difficult has it been to forecast everything that goes along with the losses in COVID, and maybe what are some strategies that you foresee the league taking really the next decade to get over some of the things that happened this year?
Yeah, well, no doubt about it. Across professional sports, this is going to be one of the most difficult years ever. Certainly in the last 40 or 50 years, there probably will not be a year like it. pretty much everybody is going to lose a lot of money, and there's just no way around it. The forecasting for the contingencies has also been very difficult. And I think you guys saw it as we worked through the summer. At times there was question about whether we would even have a season this year. If we had a season, is it going to be 16 games? Are we going to have fans in attendance? Who can have fans, et cetera? So there's had to be a whole lot of contingency planning, a lot of preparation to be able to absorb the losses. In terms of long term, I'd like to be an optimist and think that a year from now, certainly 2 years from now, we're going to be, past the pandemic, and things will be, somewhat back to normal, or hopefully all the way back to normal. So hopefully we can get back to where we were. But I think one thing that we've learned this year is to expect the unexpected, and that's just where we are, and you've got to be prepared for it.
We've got time for a couple more guys. Let's go Matt, Derek, and then Steve Walls to close it out. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Clark, I appreciate your time as always. Relating to Blair's question about the Native American imagery, I'm curious, how many conversations have you had, and what have they been about the Chiefs name and the Arrowhead name? And if there haven't been any discussions about those names, what's the difference between the Chiefs and, say, the Washington football team and Cleveland's baseball team and their names?
Well, I'll probably stay away from comparisons to the Washington football team or teams in other sports. We've just had a lot of very constructive conversations, and I've been part of those conversations with the leaders at the highest level. And we know the issues that they care about. The name and the name of the stadium are not things that are high on their list. I don't want to project what's going to happen in the future, but I do know that we've got the right dialogue going on. These organizations know that we're sincere, that we want to help them, that we want to help what they want to do from an education standpoint. I'm sure there will be more changes in the future, as I mentioned, to our game day production. But they were very supportive of our decision to eliminate the face paint and the headdresses this year, and we'll just continue the dialogue from there.
Let's go to Steve Walls with the last one. Go ahead, Steve.
Hey, Clark, how you doing?
Good.
Hey, when you talked about it a little bit earlier, but when you think about your dad, Lamar Hunt, and his support for Black athletes in the 1960s, when he selected, of course, Buck Buchanan and Otis Taylor from historically Black colleges, at a time when there may have been some backlash due to the racial tension, how much of what your dad did do you try to emulate as you go with handling things today with your organization as racial issues are going on in the world?
Yeah. Well, my dad set a great example for me and my siblings on a lot of issues. And probably his greatest strength was how he treated people. And he didn't care where you came from, what your background was, what your race was. He treated everybody he met with respect and appreciation. And that's been a lesson that, we've all learned. And, just bringing it forward to what's going on with racial equality and social injustice, I think Andy probably said it as well as anyone. We just need to love our neighbor. And if we'll do that, this world's going to be a whole lot better place.